Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you are joining us for today's ESBC community webinar. Today I am joined by Wim Madison, MVP, who will cover Exploring Azure Arc, Unleashing Extended Security Updates. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESBC_community, and our hashtag is hashtag ESBC24. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking the Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next Azure Week webinar. Azure Networking, an essential skill for cloud architects and IT professionals, with Alan Canaan, MVP. This webinar will take place Friday, 19th of July, 2024 at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. CEST. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. Join us for an exclusive opportunity at hashtag FabConEurope with our super early bird sale. Act now and secure your ticket before July 31st to unlock incredible savings up to €700. Don't delay, register today to reserve your place and take advantage of this limited time offer. Book your tickets today at www.sharepointeurope.com/European Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. Early bird sale alert for hashtag ESP24. Dive deep into the latest governance, Azure, SharePoint, Copilot, Microsoft Teams, Viva Topics, API, AI, Microsoft Entra, Power Automate, Microsoft Purview, and more. Don't miss out. Register your interest today at www.sharepointeurope.com/pricing. After this webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the questions box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it is available. And now, I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Wim. Hello, Wim. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello everybody. Thank you for joining my session. I would say, let me show my screen. I think I'm presenting now.
Yeah, I can see.
Should be okay.
Slide,
yeah. So I'm going to talk about Azure Arc and a specific part about Azure Arc, the extended security updates. So my session for this webinar today is titled Exploring Azure Arc, Unleashing Extended Security Updates. Before I start, I also want to thank everybody at ESPC for organizing these webinars and for sharing the knowledge through these webinars related to Azure this week. Let me see if I can switch my screen again. Yeah. So on the agenda, I first will start with a short intro. And I called it When Dinosaurs Walk the Earth. Then we will look into extended security updates, or ESUs, like a lot of people like to call them. Then how you can enable those ESUs by using Azure Arc. And last topic of the day, I will also look in some ways to automate the whole story, how you can troubleshoot it whenever something is wrong with those ESUs. And I will look also in and explain some things related to cost optimization, because at the end of the month, we all know somebody still needs to pay the Azure bill, and we will also have some time for a Q&A. I will answer the questions at the end, so I will go through it, and then at the end of my session, I will answer anything that pops up. Let me also shortly introduce myself. So my name is Wim Madison. I work as an Azure technical advisor and trainer for a Belgian company called Proximus NXT. The name just changed. So before a month ago, it was still Proximus, but to be more better approachable through the market and to have a better focus on the IT department, they switched the name to Proximus Next. I also am a proud board member of a Belgian user group called MC2MC, Microsoft Cloud and Client Management Community. Yeah, and we organize live events in Belgium almost every 6 weeks with a focus on people talking about Azure, Microsoft 365, but also security and the Power Platform. Even. Next to that, I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. So I also deliver all kind of trainings, most of the time related to anything related to Azure or the Microsoft Hybrid Cloud. And since last week, I think, I can call me now Microsoft MVP in Azure for the 5th year in a row. So I'm also happy with that one. If you ever want to reach out, ask a question, my socials are also on the slide. So you can always contact me through Twitter or through LinkedIn. To make it even more easier to do, I put in a QR code which directly links you to my LinkedIn page where you can connect if you want. I also have my own blog, wim@aston.com. Yeah, if you ever want to look at something technical, written, PowerShell scripts, whatsoever related to Azure Arc and the whole story, or to some things in Azure, mostly EAS focused and the network part. I have quite a lot of blogs on there also. But let us now dive into the main story of today, and let us first look into when dinosaurs walked the earth. I think most people will know this movie, and we all know they drive in Jurassic Park, the gate opens, and in the beginning everybody's wondering, and then all the running and screaming starts. If we place that one and you open the door in an on-premise server room, probably a lot of people still have something running on-prem. Most of the time they run in an on-premise data center somewhere. Most of the time it looks, with the bigger companies, something like this: a lot of server racks, cooling, everything in place. Hyper modern most of the time. So most of the time when you then, as a support engineer whatsoever, or a customer, or you need to help a customer as an engineer, and you log on to the servers, most of the time we will expect at least that they will be running Windows Server 2022 or 2025, or lowest 2016 probably. I'm not talking about Linux servers today because the focus is on ESUs, and ESUs can only be combined by Windows servers. So let us dive deeper. But what do we don't expect when we log on most of the time is that people still are running Windows Server 2012 or 2. Despite that, I have a lot of customers where I go, a lot of those servers are still running Windows Server 2012 or 2, or even Windows Server 2012. And despite that, I even see customers still running Windows Server 2008. But yeah, that's completely out of the picture with this. And why is this not that good anymore? I hope most people are aware of this date, October 10, 2023. That's when Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2 end of life was there. So after that date, no updates were available anymore, and so on and so on. But despite that, most of those customers still require those servers to still be running. So I even have a customer with around 50 servers still running Windows Server 2012 or 2. Most of the time, there are running legacy applications on top of it, or applications deployed by a third-party vendor. That third-party vendor doesn't exist anymore, for example, and there is no support anymore for the application running on top of that Windows Server 2012 or 2. So they just want to keep it and keep it alive. Next to that, a lot of customers, I always hear them saying, yeah, we're going to move that one, we're going to upgrade that one. And when I come back, it's still running the same OS because, yeah, probably somebody didn't have the time to do it, or there were more important stuff, or this just, yeah, we're going to lift and shift it and all those things, but they're still there. But of course, with that end of support, there is no option to do the updates anymore. But yeah, of course, to protect those servers better, security updates, critical updates still need to be able to be deployed. And that's in a way where extended security updates, or ESUs, come into play. Because with those extended security updates, you can still protect your Windows Server 2012 or 2012 or 2 against vulnerabilities until the end of extended security updates date is also there. Keep in mind, it's not because you can use extended security updates from the moment you enable ESUs that you can get those updates endlessly. No, it will also end after 3 years. So from now until in 3 years, you can still use them. What do they exist of? Still Microsoft brings out critical and important security updates. So Microsoft decides which updates still may be available. Maybe there is a vulnerability now in Windows Server 2012 or 2, they find it out and they try to fix it. So critical and important security updates. Those ESUs most of the time and typically don't include any new features, any design changes or anything non-security updates related. So it will only focus on critical and important security updates. Before you can see you have the mainstream support in most OSs, then you have a limited time where you have extended support, and then the last option you have to still get specific updates is the extended security updates. That's how most of the time life cycle of OS, whatever OS, goes. If you look then at the version and timing of those extended security updates, like you can see, they will end also. The end date is on October 13, 2026. So you still have some time now to move away from those Windows Server 2012 and R2s, but in the meantime, you can still receive those important updates. Doesn't matter if those servers are running in Azure or Azure Stack ACI, or even not on Azure. It's the same time duration for those ESUs, so 3 years. So my first advice during this webinar would be, if you're still running any of those servers, try to use those ESUs, but also try to make a plan, and try to stick to that plan to migrate away of those servers, even if it's an application still required. Try to do a modernization of that application. Try to contact the vendor if he's still there, but at least now you have an extra 3 years to do any kind of migration. Important to know before you start is where that your Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2 is running. So for example, it was in the beginning running on-prem, you did a lift and shift to Azure, now it's running in Azure. The nice thing is in Azure, if it's an Azure VM, it will be automatically enabled, that server for ESUs. And those ESUs will also be available and provided free of charge. So you don't need to pay for anything. You also don't need to do anything. They will be enabled automatically. Next to that, you can also move maybe a physical server running 2012 or 2012 or 2, or you have a VM running on Hyper-V, you can move that VM to Azure Stack ACI or Hub or Edge, but let us stick to Azure Stack ACI. And once again, you can also enable those ESUs on there. The enrollment you need to do through PowerShell, so it's not done automatically. And the nice thing is, if those servers are running on an Azure Stack ACI, it's also free of charge. So you also don't need to pay for the ESUs. Of course, these are two options. Next to that, in Azure, if those servers are running on a dedicated host, the Azure VMware solution, Azure Nutanix solution, same thing, they will be automatically enabled and also free of charge if anybody is using their Windows Server 2012 or 2s in any of these situations. Next to that, of course, you can also have your servers running on Hyper-V or VMware on-prem or even on a physical server. And then you have two options to enable those ESUs. First of all, you can enable them through connecting those servers through Azure Arc. So by using Azure Arc, you can also start using ESUs on those Arc-enabled servers. If you don't want to use Arc or you don't want to use Azure in any way, maybe you're a company that doesn't want to use a public cloud, there is also another option, but I must say I never tried that one out, and also don't know any customer using it in that way, and that's by using multiple activation MAC keys. So you will buy, in a way, a new MAC key and add that MAC key on that Windows server that needs to receive those ESUs. So in a way, you change the license, the key inside of the VM or the physical server, which with that specific key, you're allowed to get those updates. And if you ever want to do it like that way, I'm not going to show that one because I will be focusing on the Azure Arc enabled story. You can enable those MAC keys through Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Just know that if you try to enable it, that it will, you buy them, that it will be, can take 3 to 5 business days before they will be available or everything is working. So that's even an option if you don't want to use Azure Arc or Azure in any way. If you want to use Azure Arc, of course, there are also some per station requirements. So you need to have a software assurance via volume licensing. So you need to have an enterprise agreement subscription, an enrollment for education solutions, or a server and cloud enrollment licensing. So if you have any of those, you're eligible to use ESUs. If you don't have any of those, you probably need to look at that specific MAC key to do it in that way, or buy one of those. Otherwise, you're not allowed to use ESUs through Azure Arc. The bottom one, if you're Windows Server 2012, 2012 or 2, is machines are licensed through SPLA or with a service subscription. You don't require software assurance for purchasing ESUs. So that's a fifth option you have. So if you're not purely aware which license you have, and most technical people will probably know a little bit about it, but try to figure it out which license your company has. And hopefully you have an enterprise agreement where software assurance is also enabled, and then you can use those ESUs. Of course, like I also said in the beginning, at the end of the month, of course, somebody still needs to pay the Azure bill, and ESUs, from the moment you use them on through Azure Arc, for example, they will be billed through your Azure billing. So there will be an extra line in your Azure bill specifying that specific ESU in its cost. So if you look at it, I also put in the link in there because those prices, we all know from time to time they change. I think there was just a pricing changing this month because I already did this talk a few times and pricing went a little bit up. So most of the time, I will say it like this, you will fit in the category of Windows Server 2012, the 8-core one, and at the end of the month, you will pay 36 euros for every ESU you enable, and most of the time people match a server with one ESU license. So if you have 10 servers, for example, that fit in that category, you will pay 360 euros every month. Next to ESUs for Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2, you can also use ESUs for SQL Server 2012 if you still are running one of those on top of those Windows servers, for example. Most of the time, those things will be combined. Of course, the pricing is a little bit differently then. Depending on which version you have, it's 233 euros or 960 euros. If you map it to dollars, pricing will be almost the same. There's a little difference between dollars and euros, but it will be around that amount of money also if you map it to dollars, for example. So keep in mind, you start paying for an ESU. When you create a new ESU, you can say activate it or deactivate it in a deactivated state. From the moment you enable that, activate that ESU, even if you don't map an eligible server to it, you will start paying for it. So if you do it through infrastructure as code, push out those ESUs, and you activate them from the moment you push them out, billing will start from the moment those ESUs are available in your Azure portal, even if you didn't map any servers to them. So also keep that one in mind. Also, an important thing, we all saw that date, October 10, 2022, the end date. Keep in mind, it doesn't matter from the moment you enable an ESU. So if you now would enable an ESU, keep in mind there will be a one-time back billing charge for all the months elapsed between that end of date, that 10th October, and the date you enable that ESU. So you will pay that amount of money one time as a chargeback billing. And that will also end up as an extra line on your Azure bill. So if you start in October, for example, 2024, there's 12 months past. Yeah, do the math. You will pay around 400 euros plus one time to pay for that back billing. And after that one-time payback billing, you start paying that exact amount of money of 36 euros, for example, every month until you stop that ESU or you delete it or you stop using it. But that's also an important factor you shouldn't forget, because if you malconfigure ESUs and you need to stop them and start to create a new one, keep in mind you start paying a lot of money for nothing. So it's nothing you need to play around with just to test it out, I would say. Because every time you create an ESU, activate it, a new one, that chargeback will come into play. So, but our focus on ESUs enabled by Azure Arc. For maybe shortly said people who don't know Azure Arc, Azure Arc is a way to bring the Azure Resource Manager model to servers not running into Azure. So we all know in Azure, the Azure portal and all those things in Azure are momently built on top of the Azure Resource Manager way of doing it. And in a way, by enabling Azure Arc on a server running somewhere else, on-prem or in a data center where you rent something, you bring Azure Resource Manager to that specific server. What's the nice thing? It will foresee a single control plane, so it doesn't matter if your resource is running in Azure, you can start use, or on premises, you can start using the same tooling you're already familiar with, the same services. So for example, you can start using Microsoft Defender for Cloud on those servers. You can start using Azure Monitor, for example, if you want to monitor specific stuff on those resources. You can also start using tags, resource logs, and so on and so on. So from the moment you Arc enable a server, there will be an image related, there will be a resource created into Azure mapping that specific resource on-prem, but it will be an Azure resource which will be a sort of image of that resource running on-prem. Nice thing is you can also start using all your tools and all the other things. So that's in a little bit Azure Arc. What does Azure Arc consist of? You have infrastructure services and you have data services. When we're talking about servers, of course, we're in the area of the infrastructure services. So you have Azure Arc enabled servers, and Azure Arc enabled servers, you can onboard resources like every version of Windows Server until Windows Server 2008 even. You can't do a lot with it if you enable those into Azure Arc enabled servers, but it's possible. But if you have Windows Server 2016, 2019, 2022, whatsoever, you can Arc enable those. It also works for quite a lot of distros of Linux. So if you have SUSE, Red Hat, whatsoever, you can also Arc enable those Linux servers, for example. Next to that, you have also Azure Arc enabled SQL Server. So if you have a server running on premises, for example, or a VM with SQL on top of it, you can also Arc enable the SQL Server on top of that Arc enabled servers, for example, and you can start using tooling and services purely focused on SQL. If you have Kubernetes running on premises or somewhere else, you can also Azure Arc enable Kubernetes those. It also counts for if you have Azure Stack ACI with AKS on top of it, or you have Kubernetes on top of that one, you can also Arc enable that one. And in the infrastructure part, you also have three special things. So you can use Azure Stack ACI, of course, but if you are running Hyper-V, for example, and you're managing Hyper-V through System Center Virtual Machine Manager, you can also Arc enable SCVMM. And even the same thing counts for vSphere. If somebody is still using VMware, sorry, Broadcom these days, you can also Arc enable your VMware vSphere. So by onboarding it, you can manage every resource managed by your vSphere. So all VMs, all networking capabilities, all vCores, vMemory, and all those things related to those VMs, you can manage from inside the Azure portal. And the same thing also counts for the SCVMM part. So if you have a lot of VMs running and you're using one of those tools to manage them, maybe it's a better idea to Arc enable it through SCVMM than Arc enable every single server separately. Just if you have it, so just try to look also at that and test it out if it can help you in any way. From the moment that a server is Arc enabled, like I already said in the intro part, you can start using all kind of Azure services. Most of the services you can use and that are quite useful are Azure Policy. You can also use Microsoft Sentinel, Azure Monitor, Azure Automation. Like I said already, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. The important one related to ESUs, because in a way you need to also, it's not because you enable ESUs that those updates are coming through and will be automatically deployed and your service rebooted. So for that, you can, for example, also start using Azure Update Manager. You can also use Azure Auto Manage and Azure Lighthouse. And of course, most important part, because that's the thing we're talking about, you can also start using ESUs enabled by Azure Arc. And this will count for your Windows Servers 2012 and R2s, but also for your SQL Servers 2012, like I already said. How does it work? Your Azure Arc onboard your Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2, just like you would do with any other Azure Arc resource that you want to start using. You can create a script, the single script that you run on a server, or you can make the other one related to the service principal. But let me quickly show you how to do it, give you an idea. I will go back to my home blade. If you want to go to the Arc blade, that's of course the first thing you need to do. Just type in Arc at the global search bar, click on it, then the overview page will show, and you can also already see something, manage resources across environments. And you can simply click on add resources. Then you can choose whatever resource you want. I explained those all. We're now talking about servers, so we're going into the machines. You can just click on add machines, and then you have the option to create the single server script, the onboarding script, or one you can use for multiple servers. Just click on generate script, go through all the steps, especially look at Windows Linux. That's an important step. Also specify the correct region, specify the correct connectivity method. If you just want to use SSL 443, just use public endpoint. Most of the time, if you have a lot of SOC people inside your company, you will probably let the Arc communication flow to a proxy server or to a private endpoint. If you, for example, do it to a private endpoint, all the Arc communication can flow through your Express route or through your site-to-site VPN, whatever you want. That's also an option. Just go through all the steps. Yeah, because I didn't do it, and then you will have the option to download the script. And if you look at the script, for example, it will be looking like something like this. It's onboarding script .ps1. It's called like that. And if you open it, there are a lot of info in there that will automatically, if you run that script, all those steps will be gone through. And probably in 5 minutes, if everything is configured correctly, also specify the right, if you work with the script that will be used on multiple servers, you need to work with the server's account. Also try to adjust the script with the correct secret, otherwise it won't work. And that's how you simply onboard an Azure Arc server. What will happen on the server itself? If you go to AppWisp.cpl, you will see that the Azure Connected Machine agent will be installed. Important to know is the version, of course. If you want to start ESUs, at least you need to have the version 1.37. Otherwise, ESUs won't work. So if you have a higher one, I think at the moment it's the 140 is the latest one. if you're running that one, if you onboard something now, you will be running that one. You should be fine to go. And otherwise, you first need to update that Azure Connected Machine Agent also. What happens in Azure, of course, if you close this ones and this screen, if you scroll down and go to machines, if you open that one, you will see you have quite a list of Arc-enabled servers. To make it a little bit easier and to filter it, let me select the operating system. Give me a sec. And let me, of course, select Windows Server 2012 R2 standard and the normal, the 2012, and apply it. You will see those 4 servers are on board. So on those 4 servers, I run that specific script. You can run the script on every server separately, or you can push it out to a GPO or through SCCM, for example. You can also remotely do it to remote PowerShell. Just see whatever you want to use. If you need to do it on 100 servers, probably try to make it in an automated way, which you prefer. You can simply see already over here the OS running. You can see this is the 2012, this is 2012 R2 and all those things. And you can start using all those specific services depending on which extensions you enable. Some of the services you want to use require specific extensions. Most of the time you can add those extensions, or they will be automatically installed whenever you start using a specific server related to this. But that's not the main focus of this. So from the moment onboarded, you're good to go. So the first thing to do to start using ESUs, Arc enable that specific server and you're good to go. I also want to show you a little trick maybe if I go back to my servers. If you ever want to check the version, open run command prompt, yeah, good old command prompt by the way, and you can type in AZ same agent version, and you can also see which version is running. With the AZ-SCM agent, you can also see quite a lot of other things, but let me first explain a little bit more on my slides. Let me see if I can, I need to share it again. Give me a second and I will swap it so the correct screen is showing. So your server is onboarded, you generated and downloaded the script. It's always called the onboarding script in PS1, like I said. You run the script. Over here, you can see the script running. It will go, it's always in green. It will run specific things. And at the end, if everything went well, your server will be on board and the connected machine agent will be there. Like I said, it's even lower. You need to have 1.34. I thought it was 137, but it's 134. If you have that one, you're able to use the ESUs, but my advice will always be try to use the latest one. And if you're not running the latest one, try to update it, or yeah, also have that one added to your update process. You can run that version like I showed you, and then the next thing to do, and the thing I mostly do, you can see I create resource groups. I use also a specific landing zone for everything Arc infra related. So I use a separated subscription purely focused on anything related to Azure Arc. I create the necessary resource group. I even split up the type of resources I add. So I have also a resource group, like you can see, if it's SFVMM, all those resources will come into there. If it's Kubernetes, all the resources come into there. And same thing for servers. I also have a specific resource group related to servers. But next to that, of course, when you create an ESU, it's also a resource that's going to be added inside of Azure. So I also have a dedicated resource group specifically to store my ESUs. You can try to find out my naming convention. I have quite a lot of blocks related to it, and even in my scripts, I always try to give an example which naming convention I mostly use. But it's just to give you an idea. So my advice would be, I also see customers just doing, they have a management resource group in every landing zone they have, and they put those ESUs in there. My opinion, I find it easier to use a dedicated specific resource group for it, but it's how you want to do it. Next to that, also be aware, because it's not because you Arc enabled your server and you created an ESU, you map that ESU, and you stick it in the update process you want to use, do it through WSUS or through the Azure Update Manager. It still can be that no ESU updates will be installed on your specific server. So if that's the case, try if those servers already have those key Bs installed related to 2012 or 2012 or 2. If they don't have it, or they don't have a later ESU related to those, first manually download those, or through your ESUs process or whatsoever, and install those specific key Bs. Otherwise, it can be that ESUs won't be installed. If you want to read more about the procedure to receive security updates if they don't work, Microsoft has a nice article about it, and also a pure KB related to it. So if you go to Bing, sorry, and you look into KB 5031043, you will read all the troubleshooting steps you can do and which updates you require. So you will also find advice related to those specific updates and a direct link to those. But that's in the case if things don't work, but it's already written down quite okay to fix it. I must say I had one customer that had these problems, and just by installing those specific key Bs, the problem was solved. Think of it, those key Bs require a reboot. So try to plan it. If the customer, for example, or yourself have a specific maintenance window, try to stick in that specific maintenance window if you also want to do these, because they require a reboot. Just to let you know. Then, of course, it's important to create an ESU and a correct ESU, because depending on which things you specify in your ESU, you will pay a specific amount of money. So for Windows Server 2012 or 2012 or 2, you can have the data center or the standard edition, and you can have physical cores or virtual cores. Only use the physical cores if the Windows Server is running on a physical server, or if it's a Hyper-V Windows Server 2012 still running, you can specify physical cores. Also map the correct number of cores to the cores really installed in that specific server you want to onboard. Next to that, if it's a VM, it's a lot easier, because you can then specify virtual cores, and it will always be mapped to the standard edition. Even if the VM itself is running the data center edition, it will still be specified as a standard edition. One other thing you need to know, it doesn't matter if your server is running 4 cores, there is always a minimum of 8 cores you need to specify for each ESU. So if you want to map a specific servers with 4 cores to a new ESU, that ESU will also, and it's a virtual one, for example, that ESU will also need to have at least 8 cores specified, otherwise it don't work. You can't lower it. From the moment it's 8 and higher, you can start uplifting with 2 cores. But the minimum, the first thing you need to do is 8. And also, I think I already said it, at the end of the month, for every ESU, after that chargeback you first pay, you will receive a line in there, and you pay for that specific ESU you have, and there will be something added to your Azure bill. If you want to create an ESU for one of those, you can simply do it through the Azure portal. You can see in the example I'm doing, I'm also using a specific naming convention, which maps to the naming convention of all my other Azure resources. And you can see whenever I create a new one, I put it in a deactivated state. Remember that you only start paying for, okay, somebody's calling me. Let me drop that one. Okay, sorry. It's on my phone, but for some reason it also opens on my Surface laptop, of course, because I did the phone integration. Sorry for that. So you can see most of the time when I create a new one, it's in a deactivated state, because you only start paying for it at the moment you activate the specific ESU. From the moment it's in the activated states, you will get an extra fee on your Azure bill, of course. If I simply show you on the Azure portal, give me a second to open my portal again and show you. So let me close this, go back to Azure Arc, of course, completely scroll down to the bottom, and underneath licenses, you will see extended security updates. You can click on that one. You can simply click on create, specify your subscription. I will specify my Arc Infra one. Specify a resource group. I will specify that dedicated resource group. I will give it, just for demo purposes, I will call it like this. You can choose activate now. If you do so, you start paying. So let us activate later. Specify your region and then specify the SKU. Let us say it's a standard edition. It's a VM I want to onboard, virtual cores. And then I will show you if you would map it to a 4-core VM, for example, and you type in 4, you also be remembered that at least 8 core per license needs to be there. Keep in mind that 8 cores is for that one server, so you can't map 2 V cores, 4 cores in that 8 core. Remember that one. No, every server will have a minimum of 8 cores specified in the ESUs. Otherwise, you don't have the correct ESU mapping. So it's not. I saw customers mapping 2 4 cores in that 8-core ESU. No, that's not how it works. For every VM, at least 8 cores need to be specified in the ESU. So specify 8. You can also see this. You can also see the rate in dollars. So it's $38. And then you need to say you're eligible because you're using an enterprise agreement with software assurance, of course. And then you can simply click on create. It will start creating. Probably it will be there rather quickly. Hopefully, give it a few seconds. Sometimes this helps, jumping to another screen. And it's taking its time, of course. And there it is. If you then, for example, click on that one, you can specify tags you want. And you can also link a specific server to it. You can refresh this one, but to see which servers are eligible, for example, go back to extended security updates, click on eligible resources, and you will see all servers that will be eligible to be mapped to an ESU. So all Arc-enabled servers which are running Windows Server 2012 and you onboard it will pop up in this list automatically. You can see for quite a lot of those servers, ESUs are already enabled. For one of them, it's not enabled. So if you want to start mapping a license, you can click on this and you can start using and mapping it. So if we click on this one, linked resources, if we click on edit, no, I'm not correctly open it now. Need to be over here. Click on that. Click on the server which is not enabled. Click on enable ESUs. Specify the core type, of course, virtual cores, and then probably that specific ESU license will pop up that you can start using. And for example, select that one. Just click on enable, and from a moment enabled, you can start using those ESUs and installing those specific updates. That's how it mostly works. Let me go quickly back to the slides. I think we were over here. Let me see if I can click again. Yeah. So linking an ESU, just go to eligible resources, specify the server that's not yet enabled, and then map it to the correct virtual core or physical core and select your correct ESU you created, for example. Of course, it's difficult for a lot of people to see which ESUs are coming in. There is also quite a good link over there. If you go to Windows Server 2012 or 2 and look at ESUs, you will get all the KBs that started off from October 10, for example. You can see until here, nothing was ESU update, and all these are ESU updates. And then you can look at your server if those ESUs are installed, for example. On one of my Windows Server 2012, you can see KB 503 6960 is installed in April. So I can already show that on those specific servers, those ESUs are also coming in. So as a troubleshooting step, also keep in mind that you need to follow up if those ESUs are especially coming through, and otherwise it can be, like I showed you on one of the previous slides, that you need to install those specific ESUs, those KBs, before you can really start using those ESUs. So it's not because you onboarded the server, you created the ESU, you made the server eligible to it, and so you mapped a specific server to that ESU, that those updates will specifically come in. No. You also need to specify the way you want to start using updates. I mostly do it because I also work in Azure these days through Azure Update Manager, but also have a customer using WSUS. Also configure that those ESUs are going through that specific update process. Easiest way to do it is, of course, to Azure Update Manager, especially if you have already quite a lot of other VMs running. If I quickly go to Azure Update Manager, I can show you, for example. So if I look at my machines, for example, you can see they're all configured. So I made them all eligible for a periodic assessment. So every day those servers will be assessed. It doesn't matter if those servers are running in Arc or as an Azure VM. In this story, it's completely the same. So enable the periodic assessment, for example, see that it's yes, so that every day those servers are assessed if there are new updates available. And of course, then configure patch orchestration. The only thing, if you configure one, for the Azure VMs, you will see that it will be customer managed schedules. For the Arc enabled ones, it's still not applicable. Hopefully, Microsoft will adjust also that one. But if we, for example, scroll down to that, this one, for example, you can also see the ESU status. And you can see for those Windows Server 2012 ESUs are enabled, so you can also see it through Azure Update Manager. So those servers are in that specific process. So every third Thursday of the month, they will receive automatically those ESUs. I mostly validated the first times, but for now, in my process through Azure Update Manager, everything is working. So that's one way to do the updating. You can also use WSUS or any other thing you want to use for the updates. Let me swap again, and then we will go to the last topic: automation, troubleshooting, and cost optimization. I will try to go through this, and then we will have time for a Q&A. So you saw me clicking through the Azure portal like a real ClickOps engineer. To create those ESUs, of course, there are easier ways and more controlled ways to do it. So I myself have created 2 Azure PowerShell scripts, one to install a new ESUs and another one to delete ESUs. Also keep in mind, what's the thing I mostly see is those Windows Server 2012. People enable this for ESUs. They also start updating it, but then at a specific time, they migrate that specific server or the application running on top of it, but they forget to delete that ESU and that mapped server, for example. So if you migrate away from your Windows Server 2012, 2012 R2, and you enable those things, also don't forget to clean up and delete them, because you still pay for that ESU as long as it's there, even if no server is mapped to it anymore. You can simply go to my GitHub. You can find me Vimatasa. Go to my Azure Arc repo, and you find those scripts there. Script takes a minute to run. It also quietly describes what it does. Also try to stick to a specific naming convention. So even that specific part, following a naming convention, and the parameters is specified in the script. So if I don't follow my naming convention, that new ESU can't be enabled. To quickly show you, let me go to PowerShell through my Windows terminal. You can see I already typed it in to make it easier. And if I, for example, run it, it will create a new ESU license 05. It's already clear. So if you now go to the portal, close this one, go back to the Azure Arc overview page, then scroll down to extended security updates. Hopefully, and when I refresh it, hopefully give it a few moments, and the new license is there. That's how easy it is. Nice thing is you can specify the number of cores, which license you have. You can adjust the script, and yeah, if you want to do it in biceps, probably you can also do it in bicep. The only thing I want to pinpoint out, if you use the script, it's a combination of PowerShell and the REST API. Because in the beginning, when I created the script, only those ESUs could be created through the REST API. So I did a little wrapping of REST API in my PowerShell. But if you want to look at it, you can see I always describe everything block by block. So if you want to adjust something, it's quite easy to adjust. Let me also show you how to delete it. In the beginning, you couldn't delete through the Azure portal. Now they added that button also. So just type in, so you can do it through my script, the other script I have, but you can also simply do it through the Azure portal. Just click delete, and that ESU license is gone again. Let me go quickly back. I still have a few minutes, I think. Let me swap it. So script for creating, removing. If you ever want to validate ESU enrollment, you simply can go to your server, for example, do ACAM agent and then show, just type in that one. It will run something, and if you scroll down, it will list all those things. If you scroll down, look at the extended security updates, the state is active, and it will be refreshed every month. So the status needs to be active. That's a way how you can troubleshoot or look at it on the server itself. Otherwise, you can also go into Azure Arc and see if the ESU is enabled, or through Azure Update Manager, you will see that specific ESU is enabled. But to validate it also that everything is okay inside of your VMs itself or your physical server, just run this specific command, scroll down and look at the status, and if it's active, it's good. It's not, if it's not active, something is wrong in the back. So that's a way to troubleshoot. Let me enlarge again. Quite a lot jumping from screen to screen, I must say. You can also go into the registry. I will not show that one. The key is in there. Hey local machine, Arc ESU, and it needs to be enabled, and it needs to be put on one. That's it. So that's also a way to validate it through Regedit. Additional scenarios. You can also use a dev server and map it to a production server. First thing you need to do is create your ESU. Map your production server with that ESU, so it needs to be a paid ESU from the moment. And then if you have a dev server related to that specific production server, which is enabled to a Visual Studio Enterprise license, it needs to be a Visual Studio Dev license, of course, otherwise it doesn't map. You can use specific tags, and from the moment you do that, you can even add those two servers under one ESU license, and you will only pay for one. Let me quickly jump to the portal again and show you, for example. So I have one ESU license. You can see I have two linked resources. Although it's simple, that 8 minimum, if you click on it, you can see I specified a specific tag. It needs to exactly be that tag. You have also the disaster recovery one if you do disaster recovery scenarios, but in a prod dev situation, you need to use specifically that one. It's decided by Microsoft to be it like that. So if you have a specific naming convention for your tags, it will probably fall out of your normal naming convention. Specify that specific tag on the license. Next to that, on the dev server you mapped, you can see you have a production and a dev. Also the dev server on the machine itself, the resource related to your Azure Arc, also specify that specific tag. And if both tags are in place, even that specific ESU has two resources mapped, although it's production and dev, you only will pay for the production one. So the dev one, so you can skip $38 at the end of the month. But really check that you're eligible to do it. So you need to have that software assurance, and that dev server really need to be using a dev Visual Studio license key, of course, otherwise it doesn't work. And I think with that being said, yeah, of course, you can also use Azure policy. So extended security updates, you can deny it if you don't want people allowed to deploy them. But you can also see that from the moment of Windows Server 2012, there's also a policy over there. From the moment that Windows Server 2012 is there, it's this one. Let me quickly slap. That ESUs will be installed. That's also a way to do it. Two policies, one to do it and the other one to deny it. There's also a new page available underneath extended security updates. It's in preview, but it will show you your license uses, and if any of those licenses you created are mismatched, that they are oversized or that they are undersized. Whenever I use this one, and it's quite new at customers, most of the time it's easy to me to find out which things are not correctly configured. And I must say, despite of all the sessions I give, I still see quite a lot of people and customers wrongly configure ESUs. So through the users overview page, also under the extended security updates, you can simply look at all the ESUs you enabled and if they are being used correctly. And with that being said, I'm at the end of my session. So I don't know if there's any question I can answer or need to answer. Let me see if something's in the chat.
So thank you, Wim, for a great presentation. So now we'll get into questions and answers part. Should you wish to ask a question, please feel free to type it in the questions box now. So our first question of today is, how does Azure Arc ensure the security and compliance of on-premises or multi-cloud environments when deploying ESUs?
Don't completely understand the question, to be honest.
Okay.
Is it also in the chat?
Sorry?
Is it somewhere in the chat?
Yeah, only I'm able to see it, unfortunately.
Okay. So
yeah.
you can also start using Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And by using Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you can see if you're following specific regulations you need to follow or whatsoever. So by Arc enabling a server and by onboarding it also in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you can check it out. But those ESUs are not directly related to Microsoft Defender for Cloud. ESUs are a separated service and resource. Just made available to Azure Arc, just like you would make available Microsoft Defender for Cloud, for example. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so just the next one there is, do you have any suggestion when one wants to use Terraform to deploy ESUs or work with Azure Arc?
I must say, like I said in the beginning, ESUs are already in place from October. In the beginning, the only possibility was to using the REST API. I'm quite into PowerShell, so I just made that wrapper around it. I just also saw my delete script, for example. They changed something in the back, so I had to adjust it yesterday because it wasn't working anymore because they changed something in the REST API. But probably you can do the same thing. I don't need to, there is really a ESU, Bicep or Terraform at the moment. So probably you also need to wrap in the REST API in there if you want to do specific things. I don't think there is a specific module available at the moment. So probably you will end up with something like Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell, REST API, or you can do it through Postman or whatsoever. It depends on how many ESUs you need to create, of course. If you just need to onboard 3 servers into Arc-enabled ESUs, yeah, yeah, I don't like it to say it, but then maybe it's easier just to do it through the portal or just use my script, I would say, to make it simple.
Perfect. So I think we have one more question. Are there any upcoming integrations or partnerships that will further enhance the capabilities of Azure Arc in multi-cloud or on-premises environments?
Third-party vendor integrations, probably they mean. I have a customer where I bought the AWS servers even already in Azure Arc, but at the moment, the capabilities you can and the services you can enable through Azure Arc are mainly the ones already available in Microsoft Azure, of course. So no third-party integrations at the moment. You can start using Microsoft Sentinel, and in your Microsoft Sentinel, of course, you can add third-party stuff. And that's a way to integrate it. It all depends in which service you want to combine with Arc, of course. If that specific service has add-ons for third-party stuff, yeah, Arc is just the bridge to combine to make things connected to each other. It just if the service you want to use is available through Arc and that service supports third party, yeah, you're good to go. And otherwise, you probably have to wait.
Perfect. So I think that's all the questions. So on behalf of the ESBC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you again, Wim, for taking time out today to carry this webinar. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So
if anybody has a question later on, try to find me on X or on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to help.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Wim. So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again to you all for joining us today, and I hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.